import that we had in GraphDB 7, that's RDF data, or onto refine, or in other words, tabular data, CSV files, and so on. And then in Explore, we have everything that leads you to you viewing data without writing Sparkle. Then there's the Sparkle editor. So Sparkle is the only one that doesn't have sub-items in it. It's because Sparkle is a very central concept to RDF. That's why it's there on top and not under Explore. And then we have Monitor, which will lead you to resources monitoring. That's the resources on the machine running GraphDB, such as memory and so on, and query monitoring as well. And then we have Setup. So Setup groups everything that has to do with setting up things, be it a repository, a new user, or changing the security level of GraphDB, or a connector, or setting up the cluster, or adding or removing a namespace, or turning on or off the autocomplete index. And finally, there's the help menu that gives you access to the documentation of the Workbench REST API, as well as links to our GraphDB documentation that's hosted on our GraphDB website. And finally, in help, there's this very useful bit of information, system information to be more exact. And this is something that was there in GraphDB 7 as well. As you can see, it shows you the operating system, the version of Java, how much memory it uses, and so on, and then what arguments were used to start this particular installation. And then there was this configuration parameters tab that in GraphDB 7 wasn't very useful because it showed a bunch of things that you don't need to know about, or basically things that then don't need to be there. And that's why in GraphDB 8, this same tab, configuration parameters, shows you the actual configuration parameters for GraphDB. So if you're wondering where your data is, that is the repository data, you can see it here, or your config files, your log files, and so on. And it will also tell you if this particular setting is the default one or was provided explicitly through a configuration parameter. And now let's go back to the home screen. That's the other major difference between GraphDB 7 and GraphDB 8, the home screen. So in GraphDB 7, it mostly contains a bunch of links to documentation, and then information about the version, and then the license. However, in GraphDB 8, we decided to make this home screen much more useful. And one of the first things you'll see is this Welcome to GraphDB mini tutorial that you can use to quickly familiarize yourself with what you need to do first when you install GraphDB. So it contains information about creating a repository, and then loading data into this repository, and finally running Sparkle queries to get data out of the repository. And it also tells you that we have this REST API that you might want to use if you want to automate some operations. And if you've seen GraphDB before, you know how to use it, you can actually safely close this and never look at it again.